Hi, this is Zach here with the weekend edition of the Bulletin Board Heroes here at Zach's Traders Cafe. It is Saturday, the 10th of May. Starting off with the FTSE 100, which is sandwiched between the old pre-tariff range floor there around 84.85 and a line of resistance there from March. That's currently around 8,600. The RSI through the neutral 50 level at 57. That gives the impression of being half full rather than half empty because we're above 50. And we're also above the 50-day moving average. So while we're looking for a break of that March resistance line to take us up to 87.50. Problem obviously is the India-Pakistan potential war situation. Not a good look, and that might undermine the recent rally. But just going by the chart, we're still half full and ready to go higher. If we do break down below 84.85, then the obvious place would be a test of the rising 200-day moving average at 83.50. Moving on to the DAX, where I don't think I saw any headlines saying we've had a new closing all-time high, but it doesn't really fit the narrative of the Trump tariff disasters. But here we have a situation where above the old record highs from March, around 23,500, we're looking for the top of that rising trend channel from March last year, as high as 24,300 by the end of this month. We do break down, hoping that any support would come in 22,800, or worst case, the 50-day line, 22,300. RSI at 66, and you're not yet overbought, even though we are at record high levels. Moving on to the Dow, which is in a different place to even the FTSE and the DAX, even though it's the Dow and its country's president that started this problem. Here we have the Dow way below where the equivalent of the DAX is. So it would be around 45,000 if we had that. Instead, we are trying to hold support there at the 50-day moving average, 41,060. Ideally, we can get up to the 200-day line and the 42,200 while we're above recent support on the right side of 40,000. Our side just below 55, so in the right place for giving it the benefit of the doubt on the upside rather than a potential further retest of the 40,000 area. On to Bitcoin, which is arguably the most interesting market at the moment, and the reason that it's interesting is that there's a chance that it may be able to hit 120,000 by the end of this month. We've already done rather well so far in May with the move from 93 to 103, let's say. So that in 10 days means that the current rate of progress, we could get 120,000, which would be delightful for bulls of the crypto area. And ideally, we stay above the initial May resistance at 98,000. While we're above that, then 120 is a potential destination there. Worst case on the downside at the moment is perhaps a test of the 200-day line there at 92,000. On to gold, where a bit like the situation at Bitcoin, we were hoping that as a best case scenario we get up to 3,800 at the top of that rising trend channel from March by the end of this month. Obviously, a nuclear war in India-Pakistan might help the cause, but obviously not be so good in terms of other side effects. But if you're really caring about gold, then 3,800 is possible, while we hold above the floor of the rising trend channel currently at around the 3,300 mark. RSI still above neutral 50 at 56, so that does suggest that we still have enough gas in the tank to get up to 3,800 by the end of this month. The obvious thing, though, the cautious would be to wait for an end of day close above 3,400. If we do break down below 3,300, then the obvious area would be the initial support for this month towards the 3,200 zone. Moving on to the stocks, and a stock which somebody on Twitter seems to be very keen on at the moment, writing, publishing research reports, etc., etc. What we have here on Borders and Southern, though, is a wide rising trend channel that's been in place since the end of last summer. A nice close to the week, basically near recent highs, nice RSI 50 rebound, and I think I interviewed the company a couple of months back as well. It seems to be recovering well from that too. Top of the channel here as high as 8 pence, which we should see by the end of next month, while we remain above recent support around 4.5 pence. Ideally, we stay above that 50-day line. That's at 4.9 pence. Moving along to Contango, which seems to be recovering after a long time in the wilderness. What's interesting here is that we've had lower lows for the start of May, but much higher RSI trail. That suggests that we are on our way for at least an intermediate recovery. What also helps is that if you look very closely, you can see that the 50-day line is rising, and also if you look even more closely, you can see that for Thursday and Friday we opened at the low, close at the high. I would doubt that that would be an accident, and somebody is quite keen on the shares, and they will not fail this time because of that rising 50-day line. If you are cautious, you wait for a break, maybe you just as soon as intraday Monday, 1.1 pence mid to then target 1.8 pence, ideally by the end of next month or even sooner. On to another stock where you would not imagine there was casual buying in it, and that is Cloudbreak. Finally bouncing off the lows. Very interesting chart here in the sense that we had an unfilled gap to the upside back at the middle of last month. So that was actually the start of the rally because we'd already had a couple of gaps down, especially one at the beginning of March. So it's a bear trap island reversal, one of our favorite setups, something I totally missed at the time, but because obviously Cloudbreak's not been a stock to look at. Current situation is that above the mid-February resistance there at 0.12. We're looking for 0.28 by the end of next month, and looking very strong indeed, given the way that we've had the unfilled gap to the upside. And then last week, 4 days in a row where the shares opened at the low, closed at the high. So that, for me, is like a dead cert in terms of a potential turnaround there. We've obviously already had that. But key here, holding 0.12 for Cloudbreak. Moving on to Coro, which is has been trying to base in the recent past again the move to new lows, and then off the lows, those strong candles opening at the low, closing at the high, and we've had 3 of those in last week, plus an unfilled gap to the upside. I would suggest that this is looking as though it can get to 1.8 by the end of next month, while we're above the initial May resistance of 1.05. So hopefully Coro will deliver. Moving on to Filtronic, which just on a fundamental basis seems to be one of the most obvious buys in the market, potentially big buy given its links with Starlink, which is obviously a wonderful company because it's owned by Elon Musk, or he's in charge there. Its current situation is that we're nearly at the top of the initial target here, 127 pence, top of that rising trend channel from the beginning of last year. We've got a rising 50-day line. We had a bear trap gap reversal from below 98 pence. And the longer we stay above the 50-day line at 101, the greater the chance of move to its high as £1.60 by the end of next month. Hopefully we'll even stay or have decent price action above the previous resistance area around £1.15. On to Hydrogen Utopia, which is a nod to the late Simon Mann, somebody I met and interviewed over the recent past since he became chairman of Hydrogen Utopia. And here what you can see is that we are near the lows, and hopefully this is the end of the bear run, given that we have actually had such an extended move to the downside. Market cap of the company only 4.4 million now. The current situation is that while we make no fresh low below the initial April support there at around a penny, the chances of a move back to fill that gap from the beginning of April around 1.8 pence, but obviously that is a best case scenario target. If you're cautious, you'd wait for the shares to get above the recent gap there at 1.25 before assuming that the worst is over. Moving along to stock which is rather obscure, Ingenta, and here the situation is that we've got a potential basing in place. The shares went much lower for March, April, and the RSI stayed the same at the very ultra low levels around 10. Friday's action again looking as though somebody means business, especially after it came after the late April price action. Initial target here 65 pence. If you're cautious, maybe wait for an end of day close above that, and then target the 200-day line at 79 pence. But the key here is staying above that 50-day line at 55 pence mid. Moving on to Kazera, which is celebrating apparently a windfall here. We've had an unfilled gap to the upside through the resistance, top of the channel there from April last year as high as 2.5 pence. Looking at that well before the end of this month while we remain above 1.8 pence. On to core potash, which is looking surprisingly good at the moment. And the reason for saying that is that, well, the 50 and 200-day lines rising, and we've got a bull flag above old resistance, or based at old resistance, around 2.7 pence. Target here is high as 4.75 pence. Could be as soon as the end of this month, especially as we're going into a golden cross there over the next week or two. Moving along to a decent situation in the form of Pensana, or one which is improving itself. Here you can see that we've got the shares very volatile, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but remaining above the 50-day line on the last swing low, and looking for 50 pence by the end of next month, while we remain above the floor of the channel there at 30 pence. If we're really lucky, and it's not out of this world to suggest it, we get to 50 pence by the end of this month. Looks as though something decent is happening there, especially with a rebound above that 50-day line. On to Rockhopper for fans of the Falklands / Malvinas. Here you can see that we've got rising trend channel there from October, top of the channel there as high as 64 pence. And certainly looking for that while we're above the price channel floor at 45 pence at the moment. Time frame on that should be easily by the end of this month. Moving along to Sealand, where I presume that 1 or 2 people got hurt by that move from below a penny to over 12 pence, but obviously if they were short, they're less hurt now. They managed to get the share price down. Congratulations. That helps so many people, doesn't it? Rising trend channel base at the moment. 1.4 pence the top of the channel. We're looking and feeling that this has the low is in there, and the only thing missing, I suppose, at the moment is the lack of the RSI getting through the 50 level. It's at 49, but either an end of day close above RSI 50 or above that 50-day line at 0.92, and we could at least be going back towards the 1.4 area on Sealand after the rather volatile ride that the shares have had so far this year. On to the last two. First one is Tiger, and here, smart money apparently in here and looking quite good. The only thing missing now really is an end of day close above the 200-day line at 0.12. We've obviously failed at that 200-day line a couple of times in the recent past, but it looks as though this time there are some big guns in there. 0.2 the target for the end of next month, once or if we get through that 200-day line on an end-of-day close basis. The only other thing missing, or the only other thing to remember, is that ideally we stay above the 50-day moving average at 0.09 ahead of a move to the upside. Finishing off with Vast Resources, where I see the companies happily getting interviewed here and there and everywhere. Current situation is that we are on our third target. We're trading around the third target that we had since the shares were called up from 0.1 pence here back in January. So it's nearly 5x. It's been 5x. The overall view here now is that above the third target there at 0.47, we're looking for 0.7, which is derived from, if I can show it, a line of resistance from the early part of 2024. So that was the old peak there. So let's see if Vast can do that ideally by the end of this month, or the latest by the end of next month. Upside value we hold above 0.4, just below recent support. That's it for me today. More updates during the week.